Routine was announced in August of 2012 at Gamescom. I was around 10, with an original release window of spring 2013, having very obviously missed the window by a whole lot more than the hair above my lips. In 2016, a new release window was set for March 2017. Again, they would fly straight on by that window and go pretty radio silent from then on. In 2022, at Summer Games Fest, it was re-announced and was a first impression for many, including yours truly. I put it on my wish list and then, well, completely forgot it existed. It's been a long road for Luna Software. A video game that began as a solo dev project has grown to credit over 206 professional contributions, including that of composer Mick Gordon. It had many a rewrite, much was reportedly scrapped from early development, and its identity from Dear Esther-like walking sim to procedurally generated permadeath horror has been pretty fluid. But we're here now, in the very back end of 2025, and it's live. Through such turbulent development, I think we're all wondering if it managed to stick the landing. And I'm happy to report that it did. In Routine, post the very cryptic cinematic in the beginning, you, the player, are stuck firmly in the space boots of, well, we never really find out. You're given the title of external software engineer, and that's that. After a 7-day isolation period, which would be scary had this game ended up releasing before 2020, you awaken in the arrivals wing of Union Plaza, a depressingly derelict tourist resort built on the surface of the moon. This is Chapter 1, Birth. That's weird, considering how the game was advertised, but maybe it's just a metaphor, or something. The extent of our backstory is that we are here to assess and debug core ASN systems for operational anomalies. We get to have a little fun suiting up and learning how to move around. The tutorial is very on brand and thematic. There's an interesting survey with no room for criticism apparently, and some really cool leaning mechanics. I especially like how we interact with these displays. There's really very little HUD, if any at all, so everything here is tailored for your immersion. We get to print a cute little numbered ID, and this self-labeled sci-fi horror game shows us that it has a sense of humor, frustrating me with the mundane before it tries to kill me. And on that note, we head out into the great unknown. Routine is all about atmosphere. The facility is seemingly devoid of a life, but the sounds of a malfunctioning automatic security system, to a similar tune of 2001's A Space Odyssey and Alien in all their sci-fi realism glory, illuminate the path ahead. Mick Gordon, and once he left the project in 2024, Nathaniel Jordan Apostol were right at home with the score, with the big caveat that it's one of those soundtracks that'll be largely unsung, as it really shines in its subtlety. It's like bass guitar in a band. We'd be nothing without them, but fuck if we know what they're actually doing sometimes. In just the same way, this wonderful aesthetic would be nothing without the music that accompanies it. Luna Software has nailed the vibes. Harder than my upstairs neighbor's girlfriend at around 6:30 to say 7 p.m. They've got to be on a schedule, because every single weekday it's just fucking, it's constant. I'm not going to give you an example, but yeah, anyways, Luna Software nailed the vibes down to the post-processing I usually do away with immediately, even if I have to edit a few .ini files to do so. Graphical fidelity is not necessarily anything to write home about. The lighting and shadow is competent. Textures aren't a sticking point in either direction. Look, if you've watched any of my other content, you'll know that I don't care so much for fidelity as I do for performance, which is smooth as can be here, and art design. The latter of which is unmistakably inspired, but a really strong identity cuts through the familiar beats of this aesthetic. The Cosmonaut Assistance Tool, or CAT, is no exception. This is your lifeline. It's how you interface with everything in the facility, how you open doors, even how you save your game. It's also how you fight back against these ghastly looking androids. This, I suppose, is your HUD, but it's still very immersive, almost painfully so with such a thematically appropriate refresh rate. Everything is done in-game. If you need to connect to something, you inspect the cat and click a button on the side. If you need to fix a display after a little electromagnetic interference, you click a different button. Having to physically do things, usually relegated to a few buttons on a keyboard or controller, really sweeps you up into this world. It's especially cool that you're forced to use the device's navigation in darker areas. Funneling your vision into a much more unnerving little monitor is an intelligent shakeup. Not to mention, it makes it far scarier trying to escape from these creepy fucking robots. What insane asylum escapee thought these things would keep the peace? When you're free aiming a display at 15 frames per second, it is much more intense. I mean, they look expressly designed to be scary, which might actually be a negative for some, as I don't see this design being approved for anything but that. Thankfully, I could suspend my disbelief far enough for this. Now, I hate to burst your bubble, but if you're expecting alien isolation levels of AI complexity, it's not here. It's not even close. I don't know if it loses any points for its simplicity because it's perfectly functional and their showings are short-lived enough to not overstay any welcomes, but it certainly doesn't score any. It has that simple hide, run, or die loop that we've seen a million billion times before, but it's a loop done well and encased in an amber of so much quality that it doesn't really matter in the end. I can't forget that there are some really great scares as well, almost never cheap, and there aren't 1,000,001 jump scares to desensitize you. They are smartly placed and only complement the heavy, heavy atmosphere that permeates this experience. That is really what makes all of this so engaging, and figuring out why this dysfunctional security system seems to think you are the enemy here. Now, there's not a whole lot I can go into regarding the narrative without ruining it for you, but I also fear the possibility that I'll undersell it, if you know what I mean, so I'll do my best anyhow. A majority of this experience is fantastic for those of us that love piecing together a mystery, and you'll get to do that through many, many notes, recordings, video and audio, plus a heap of well-developed environmental storytelling. There are little puzzles to avoid monotony. Most are simple problem solving, some are a little more complicated. There's a UV feature on your cat that can make them feel more hands-on, but the real challenge comes from how hands-off the game is. It isn't overly complex. I mean, the only resource you need to manage is your battery life, and they're pretty abundant, but it makes a point of not holding your hand to offset that. It's certainly linear, but you're kind of on your own, and they've struck a super satisfying balance in that regard. Its simplicity is endlessly rewarding because you feel autonomous. Most everyone is gonna have a similar experience, but my girlfriend and I had a ton of fun bouncing theories off of each other and being wrong almost every single time. I don't think a predictable narrative makes for a bad one, but it was nice to be surprised. And it was even nicer for the surprise to be more Red Wedding and not Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet, if you get me. Soon enough, you'll find that things go deeper than they seem, and the villain is not as apparent as advertised. There is so much more than meets the eye here, but that's really all I can say about that. I urge you to experience this game for yourself, and if the title wasn't enough of a hint, it's not just about androids. If I had to entertain some criticism, I'd say that I've seen and tentatively agree with those saying the game is short and the innovation that makes it is also short-lived enough to break it for some people. I clocked in around 6.5 hours, with a solid half hour being the dumbest shit imaginable, so a smarter person might do it in 6. The cat device has many functions, but you'll only use them all a handful of times. And I can understand if that's unattractive to some. But if I can bring you back, it was not like that for me. I felt that while the innovation was appreciated, it was too shallow to pad out a much longer game, and I'm really happy they made the choice to condense it into such a short and sweet package. So while it may have been a 13-year wait for a game that you might just finish in a session or two, it is one of the most narratively consistent, aesthetically consistent, and mechanically consistent horror games I've ever played. So Routine might not make the Hall of Fame for gaming as a whole, but it is a powerhouse in its genre, and I definitely recommend it to anyone looking to dip their toes into the best of it. Hey, if you happen to enjoy the video, consider dropping a sub. I promise I am in it for the long run. Thanks!